What I'd like to do next is to get rid of these printf calls. Printf is from C, and it differs from cout in that the first parameter is always what's called a format string that teaches printf how to format the other parameters that follow. It's what's known as a variadic function because it can take any number of parameters, and it's not particularly caring about the types that it takes either. It relies on the format string to explain, in this case these %d for decimal indicate that it's being passed numbers here and here, whereas down in this one, where we're printing out the animals, it's expecting a number and a string. Some of the bugs that plague beginners around printf happen when you lie to it, when you give it a character and tell it you're giving a string, when you give it a string and tell it you're giving a character, and so on. It's not type aware. We want our code to be both type safe and type aware, and that means getting rid of these printf and replacing them with their equivalent in cout. So I'll need to add an include for iostream, and I'll add a couple of using statements as well. Then it's a fairly mechanical transformation. The one thing you need to deal with is that the placeholders here are kind of in the middle of the format string, and you need to pull back what you're going to pass in instead. Now, in this particular case, the only thing that's going to come after that parameter all animals is an end of line, so I can do this. That's the equivalent cout. I'm just going to quickly perform the same transformations on the other couts in this file. Interesting tidbit about ENDL, by the way, it doesn't just put a new line character, which is what I'm substituting with, it also flushes out the buffer. If you're writing to a file, that can be really important. It's super frustrating to step over a line that appears to have written to a file and go look in the file with Notepad or whatnot and don't see your stuff there. It's because it's been buffered. Using ENDL, whenever you end a line, will flush the buffers every time and actually write your output. Occasionally you may have a performance issue where you would prefer to use new line characters and just be buffered and write every once in a while, but that shouldn't be your first choice. You should do that only if you really need to, because it can confuse people. There's our equivalent cout line for printing out each number in the array in this for loop. And since there's a lot of similarity in here, I can just do a little copy and paste to make this go faster. Now I'm going to copy this whole thing, including the CStir, but then I'm going to point out that you don't need the CStir. The cout operator knows what to do if you give it a char star, which is what you'll get from this call to c_stir, but it also knows what to do if you just give it a string, and that's obviously a better place, so we can remove that sort of temporary crutch involved with switching back and forth between char stars and strings. As you can see, this gets reasonably mechanical after a while. In fact, the problem is actually getting a little too mechanical and making changes that you didn't intend to make. But there's a one-to-one correspondence between what you can do with printf and what you can do with cout. Let's make sure this builds. If anything, life gets a little simpler using cout because you don't have to make sure that you're telling printf this is a number, this is a string, and so on. And when I run this application, it still runs exactly the same as it did before, printing out the animals, the numbers, and so on.